2, 1. We'll let the room start to populate here. Welcome everybody to another session of Virtual Coaches Clinic being brought to you by Basketball Embassy, and very excited and honored to have with us today Mark Bennett. Mark is the founder of Performance Development Systems. My colleague Alan Keene has spoken so much about Mark's work and the influence he's had on him as a coach, and maybe you saw him recently featured in Basketball Breakdown with some interviews there. And so really looking forward to this conversation. Mark's focus is around needs-centered coaching, and today we're going to be talking about how to develop basically a team of self-adaptive players and helping our players focus on improving their learning and improving ourselves as coaches as well. So Mark, again, thank you so much for joining us. Very honored to have you be a part of this session, and take it away.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I just want to go through some self-reflective points first, just to establish where we are with our own challenges as coaches. Is obviously now modern coaching's moved on, and one of the things that we really want to achieve is self-thinking, self-adapting players under pressure live in a game. What we don't want them to do is rely on the coach from the sideline telling them what to do, or actually not be confident without fear of making the right decisions. So one of the challenges we have is, if you look at your teams you're working with now or in the past, is I'm sure there's players you say, this guy does this anyway, or this lady does this anyway, but I'm having some players that literally will not make the right choices in the moment. And sometimes coaches struggle. So I want to go through some frameworks just to help you reflect and think about, are you doing these things first? So one of the things we've got to look at is the order and sequence to allow a player to be effective in making decisions. And one of those key areas has to be is starting from that awareness of their own state. And the reason why I'm connecting with this is we've got to understand that players need to understand what's the best state for them to be effective. And I'm going to share some principles we can do in training, but I'm just going to go through this sequence. Being aware of your own state, making sure they're in the effective state for them. The second one is then effective scanning. And what I mean by that is, are we training our players effectively, often enough, putting a real focus in practice to actually scan whether they have the ball or they don't have the ball, whether their team has the ball or the opposition has the ball? Is they're scanning for opportunities and threats. So always looking, where are the opportunities, where are the threats with the players, the spacing, where are my players, where are the others? Continually, what they need to be doing that. Now, based on how effective their scanning is, that would allow them to collate the data. That data allows them to make effective decisions. And their decisions will be based on their understanding of the game, their confidence of backing themselves with their choice, and then the pressures of the game, how that might influence their confidence. So here's the challenge. If they're not in the right state, effective for them, if they start to get frustrated, down, angry or scared, whatever it might be, what that's going to do is it's going to limit their ability to scan. So what's going to happen is they're going to start drawing in or just following the ball or have their head down or still be thinking about the thing that's happened in the past that they feel didn't go well. So now no longer are they scanning effectively. So now no longer are they collating the data. So what's going to happen is often is when the ball comes to them, they're now thinking, okay, the ball's coming to me. What are my options? And because they haven't collated the data first to allow them to have options, now they react, and often they'll react to their go-to. So under pressure, you'll have players that will always do the same thing, or they'll just go for a pass or a dribble, whatever it might be, and you're getting frustrated because you can see a better option. So once we got to effective scanning, now they're making a choice. The process now is, are they committing to the choice? So what we've got to say is we can never review anything with the players until they commit to the choice they made, because we're wasting our time. So that's something, again, we need to talk about how we need to drive that in practice. Now, here's the final element that's critical. They need to be able to understand how to and be effective at reviewing live the choice and the execution separately. And now this is really key, because if we think about it, how many players do you know that once they make a decision, they're actually focused on their review is literally either an emotional review, it came off or it didn't, or just the success of did it come off, i.e. did I make the basket, did I make the pass, whatever it might be. But obviously there's too many variables. So what's going to happen is then you may find you're going to have some players that often you're thinking that is not the right choice, and they're continuing to make it in the game. But because it's come off, that even what discussion you have with them, even afterwards in the post-match reviews or later on, they'll be saying, yeah, but coach, it came off, so it must have been the right choice. So what they need to understand is, yeah, it might have came off then, but the risk and potential of that being consistently successful is really low. So we've got to look at where were your more successful options, where were the other options, and also to expand their game. So if we think about those working through, question now as a coach, irrelevant of the tech tack, how often are we sourcing the issue? So what I mean by that is when we're scanning ourselves as coaches for players, when they make a choice you don't feel is right, how often are we scanning back to, okay, what is the source of the problem? Is it their state's not right? If their state's not right, they're not going to be scanned effectively. If their state's good, now we're looking at, are they effectively scanning? Well, if they're not effectively scanning, there's the issue. That's where the intervention needs to be. If their scanning is effective and they're making the wrong choice, now what we're going to be asking ourselves is, okay, how is their understanding of the game? That's an intervention we can check back in practice. And then if their understanding of the game is effectively, they saw the options, but they're choosing to go for the same ones, we can be looking at then, is that a confidence thing? That actually they don't feel they can back themselves in the other options, so they always work to their go-to. Now, we know when we scout teams, often we'll spot a player, we say, if we put this player under pressure, they'll always do this. So the opposition is doing the same with us. So what we can do is we can work through this process to identify, right, where is the source of the issue? There is my intervention. The other challenge we got is a lot of players can't self-review. So what will happen is they'll just do whatever they did, and they're not now thinking live, okay, was that the right choice, execution, right, I'll learn from that, yeah, nailed it, it just didn't come off, but it was the right thing, or no, next time I'm ready to do this. So what we're looking at as well is if they're relying, what I call rubbernecking, if the players are relying on coach to tell them it was right and wrong, if we got coach on the sideline and even in practice and in games, still shouting, that was great, Jimmy, Stevie, go over here, next time come in close, or whatever it might be, we're not allowing a player, or actually we're not forcing the player to actually give you the answer. Now that may be a quick one-liner when they're running back or a thumb up, or we might be looking for, right, let's put the scenario in again, and can we see if they're making the same choice? Now they are, right, let's rotate them out. Now they went, okay, just review what happened over there. Now we can take them through that sequence. Is often we'll have players that will just look at us waiting for coach to fill in the gap, or they'll have learned answers, they'll just tell you what you want to hear. So what you want to do is use the same framework of saying, okay, talk to me about what happened over there. What were the choices? What choices did you see? Now they're having to be specific on the response. We're not asking them, okay, why did you make that choice, Phil? We're establishing what choices did you see. Now, the other reason that's really important is because we need to make sure, have they seen the same as we've seen? We're stood at a different angle. They may have seen something different. But also we've got to establish is, if they're not scanning effectively, why are we getting caught up in the tactical choice? The issue is scanning, right? Let's develop the scanning. So can we see that process is really key, and it allows us as coach to go, where is the issue? Intervention. Now, we want them to do that in matches under competition, of course, but what we've got to do is plan that in practice. So one of the things I always use is we've got to get the players bought into them seeing the value of why we want them to start reacting and making decisions live. Now that can't just be a one chat. What we've got to do is get the players to see the value, even if they don't like it, to see the value in it based on the way we want to play. So what I always do is I connect with what I call the Lighthouse. And what I simply ask and I do this with coaches that I mentor, is I ask the players, if you were to describe yourselves in the ideal game, that's us playing to our dream, to our potential, to our capacity, what would be the dream? What would I see in a game? And what we're looking for is, we don't want to say, well, we win the game. Yeah, okay, you win, great. But what am I seeing? What are you doing? Because a win is after the whistle's gone. That's the end of the game. What am I seeing during the game that will facilitate the win? Right, now we're getting down to, right, we need to be relentless. We need to be on it. We need to be making great decisions consistently, committing to the decisions. We need to back each other, adapt live, and not allow the scoreline or bad referee decisions to negatively influence us. And get them into thinking and talking through that, and you can spike in a question, okay, so what do you need in order to do that? Well, we need to scan well. We need to be in a present. We can't let negative past thoughts in the last 5 seconds or a bad ref call negatively influence us. Working through that process. And then once you have that lighthouse, you then say to them, I totally agree, but you haven't mentioned coach. So are you saying that to get our dream, you need to be able to do that yourselves as players without me reminding you or telling you? Now, once we get to that point, we can say, right, I totally agree with that. So what do I need to do differently as a coach? And importantly, what do you guys need to do differently as players in practice and in games to achieve that lighthouse? Then your lighthouse is your reference. So everything you work towards then within practice, you link back to the lighthouse. So what we're saying is, if what we're putting in is not critical to our lighthouse, then why are we doing it? Get rid of it. So one of the things we've got to be saying there to the players is, I can't continue to remind you and shout up and down, giving you the answers. I don't want you to come in for a timeout in a group, even in practice, and have the same one or two players giving me the learned answers. The reality is there's two issues with that. One is they may not be the players that have to make the decision in that moment, so I can't just rely on the one or two voices. Secondly, and this is really important, is whatever's happening now, you're telling me the answer, I need you to show me the answer. So in practice, if you're coming in and you're saying to me, okay, coach, I saw this, we should have done this, so next time we're going to do that, what we're asking them then to, well, correct answer, but when did you recognize that? And why didn't you do something about it? I want you to show me the answer, not tell me the answer. So when you come in here, you can share why you made that choice and whether you would have backed yourself again, or you learned from that, you'd adapt. But at least you're committing to choices. Even if it doesn't come off, you're showing me you're committing to choices. So does that make sense? I'm just going to check with Lason if he's got any questions so far before I move on to the next bit. Oh, we may not be there, so I can't see any questions, so I'm going to work on.
No questions at the moment, Mark.
Okay, great. Feel free to type them in, guys, as I'm going, because I want to do is make sure that you're getting the most out of this, as opposed to me working on, you go, Mark, what do you mean by that? Can you give an example? So what I'm going to link into now is the whole point of how do we get players to start impacting on practice. So technical and tactical is critical, but it's the scanning and the choices you're making that actually is going to determine the effectiveness. One of the things we've got to understand with that is we've got to start with stage one, is teach them how to self-review. So this is a basic element of, right, all I want you to do is make a choice and commit to it 100%, and then review the choice and the execution separately. So what we start doing then is, even when we break them up into timeouts in practice, instead of just splitting them into two teams, we can split them into 4 groups and say, every time we stop in practice, I'm going to split you in. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. I want you to review only what we said success was for the session and what our non-negotiables are, which I'll talk about in a small while. Then when the 20 seconds is up, we pull them in and we nominate players. Okay, talk to me and relevant back to, can you talk to me what happened over there in the corner? Talk to me what happened on the transition. I'm interested. If they start talking about stuff that isn't relevant to what we said success was for that phase of the session, we just ask them, remind me what we said success was. Okay, only review that. Now, when we have the quiet players that don't normally share that evaluation, which is key if we want them to start evaluating live, all we do is we set up the scenarios. We pick what I call our ninjas. These are the players that you would recognize now to say, this is the guy or the girl that always talks. They know their stuff. Often they'll talk over the other players, and the other players are just silently waiting because this person always talks. What you would do with them is you take them to the side and you go, I love that you give me all the answers, but for this phase, can you help me help the other players? I want to find out what they know. So next time when we come in on those timeouts and those chats, I don't want you to say anything, but what I want you to do is stand next to one of the quieter players and just ask them what they thought. Just arm round and just ask a chat next to them, and then give them that high five, that hand touch when they say something. So can you help me with that? So what we're doing is we're utilizing the very players that we know, actually you're shutting down the growth of the other players with no negative intention. You're just not aware. You're just saying all the stuff. So what can help with then is we might find some of those ninjas, the people that get frustrated with the other players. So live, instead of talking to them effectively, they start talking down and at them. It's a bit like the old coach-led coach. We don't want coaches telling the players what to do, and yet when they come in, we've got the same players telling players what to do, as opposed to going, okay, Stevie, talk to me what your choices were over there. Okay, what could we do differently here? So now we're getting that interaction going in the way we want to in a short period of time. So that's stage one. Alan Keane, if you listen to him, he may have shared one of the things I do with the team that helps bring this alive. All you do is you split the teams up fairly equally, mixed bag, and you just put a whiteboard on either end of the court, and you just say names or bib numbers, even if they don't know the names yet, if it's a new team, of the opposition all the way down on the board. And all you say is you're going to play for a time, could be 4 or 5 minutes, 3 minutes. All I want you to do is I want you to play. After the end of that 3 minutes, you're going to come to the board without me as coach, you as your team. They go to each of their boards, and you want to write down the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition and what your strategy is going to be. The strategy must be that you're going to exploit your strengths and you shut down their weaknesses, and then you let them at it. What you're doing as a coach now is you're scanning specifically, not just the technical tactical they're making. Are they scanning? We can look at the body language. Where are they? Are they looking around? Or are they just following the ball? What's the interaction like? Are people saying things are effective, and is it having an impact? What I mean by that is, are they saying white noise, or is what they saying someone listening to, accepting, acknowledging, and acting on it, or is it just white noise generalization? Who are the players that are positively influencing? Who are the players that are being negatively affected? Who are the players that are actually just saying stuff? So we're looking at all these things. Then they go to the board. Again, we're not involved, we're stepping back. Who are the people talking? Who are the people being in silent? What's the information going on the board? And importantly, what is their strategy? I would suggest give them maximum 90 seconds to start with to do this. Then, once they've wrote down what their strategy is, you send them out again. You say nothing to them. But what you're looking at is whatever they've put on their board as a strategy, you're now looking to see, are they applying what they said? Now, here's the next things you scan for. One, are they applying what they said? Secondly, is it working? Yes or no? If it's no, are they continuing to apply it, or are they just changing it now based on what they see, which is what we want? You send them back again, you're looking. The first question, if they just start talking again, you can do with the groups is, were you successful? Did you commit to what you said you were going to do? Yes or no? If no, why not? If yes, did it work? If it didn't work, did you change it? And then you set them on the boards again. So by doing this basic process, what we're getting players to do that often are quiet, that we're getting them to interact. Now, what you can do is put the intervention in where you pull some of the, just while they're doing that chat for a quick 3 seconds, pull one of the dominant players to the side that's doing all the talk and says, right, I love what you're saying here, but can you be more silent or ask some of the quiet guys questions to get them involved for me? Fist punch, hand touch, push them back in. And now what we're doing, we're influencing, but we're scanning to see the strengths and weaknesses in the team. That's your baseline. From that, you'll see the intensity, the volume, everything is at a higher level than they're used to. You ask them to review that. Then what we're asking them to is, okay, what you did there, we're going to expand on that. I want you to do that every time. But here's the point. When you come out now, I may just shout your name, and all I'm after for is a quick review. And the review might be, I nailed it, or actually next time I come around the side, or I miss out, or pass to Stevie. So quick 1 or 2 while you're running back on the court. It's not a long conversation. Once we can't get that, or I may give another option where I'm just going to rotate you out. I'm just interested in your opinion. I don't want you to tell me what I want to hear. I'm interested in your opinion. So this is the other important element to grow this. We can't just ask players questions when they do something unacceptable. What we have to do is ask players questions to review things when it goes exceptionally well. This is important because if we only ask questions when they've done something wrong, then the players just learn. Well, coaches asked me a question. I must have done something wrong. Where was I? I was over here in the corner. Well, it must have been this. I must have just didn't have my defensive stance, or I wasn't stepping zone, or whatever it might be. So they just learned answers. What we're also not doing them is we're not getting them to reflect on the very things we want them to repeat. So if we now start going, Stevie, point on there, Stevie did something phenomenally well, but he didn't recognize it, or any of the players didn't recognize it verbally. We're saying, Stevie over there. Now Stevie is thinking, oh, what have I done wrong? We're saying, no, I'm interested. Did you recognize what was so great about that? Yeah, okay, show me again. It's these little connections. So now they're saying, when coach asks something, it's very quick, doesn't want a long sentence, but coach is interested in my opinion to what was going on, and it could have been something great, not just unacceptable. So when they come out for the little one-to-ones and we quit rotate, we're just saying, okay, what did you see is the first question. Let them describe the detail. If it's generalization, can you talk to me about what you saw there? Okay, what were the options? Why did you go for that one? Interested why you made that choice. So again, we're not telling it was right and wrong. We're getting them to connect with. Then it's just a hand. Okay, so would you change anything? Coach, next time I do this, or I'm not sure, coach. Now this is where that sliding scale comes in. Now it's okay to tell. It's okay to say, well, actually, this would have been a better option just because Danny was open on the side and your percentage is great. Do you get that hand touch? Okay, show me back in. So this is that thing about this need-centered coaching where a lot of people call it athlete-centered. Our whole point is to make ourselves redundant, but there are times when we need to tell. There are times when we need to say, okay, I'm not going to do 20 questions here because we're wasting our time. We're getting disengaged. My point should be, I want to get to players where I never have to ask a question. They're reviewing live. I'm putting them into groups. They now learn this is the expectation. We get in the hand touch. They get into the point quick. Then they're showing us the answer. Then I only have to ask questions if they miss something or they're not giving me the details. So that may be, okay, yeah, but what if this happened, Jimmy? Okay, Sarah, but what were the other options there? What could have happened? Because they've given us the information, because they know when you come out, you know what's expected of me. Now, just by doing these little steps consistently in practice, what you're going to start finding is that the players will not rely on coach as much, because they know the information that they're sharing has to be relevant and they have to show you. So they're the first stages. I'm going to pop it out now if we've got any questions.
Yes, actually, we do have a question here from one of our participants. Actually, a couple coming in. So first question is, if we focus and ask what went well so much, then do we reject the theory of learning from mistakes, growth mindset, and that the path to success is that of addressing failure?
Well, I think we can ignore the process of the growth mindset in that of an interpretation of growth mindset. What we want them to do is we're not going to say, what did you do well or what did you not do well? We're just going to ask to review, but we're going to snipe, as I call it, when things go exceptionally well and when they don't. The reality is, it's not just that we learn from failure, we learn from our interpretation of an experience. We don't even learn from the experience if our interpretation has been effective. What I mean by that is, somebody can consistently do something wrong, and we're spending tons of time talking about why it went wrong, but they're continually doing the same things wrong. So that's telling me, well, they're not learning from it, or I'm feeding to them. The same token is, are you going to use this example for you in matches? Here's my point in matches, and I've worked with over 30 sports now, up to international teams at the highest level at pro and all the way down to grassroots. In competitive environments, if you're reviewing effectively post-game, the review should be no different if you lost by 50 or you won by 50. What we often find is when a team wins by 50, the review is quite generalized. When they lose by 50, it's a surgical breakdown of everything. What we're doing is we've got to make sure is we can learn from every experience. Here's the key. We need to make sure our interpretation of the experience is accurate, and we need to make sure, what are the things we did? Why was that so successful? How can we repeat that? What did we do differently that time that gave us so much success? Because I need to make sure you guys understand that so you can repeat it. So that's an awareness of a learning. The same as, okay, what happened there? What were the other options based on if it was unsuccessful? The other thing we've got to recognize is failure often is a misinterpretation. So what I mean by that is, if we're now trying something new we've never tried before and we're committing to it, it may not come off. It doesn't mean to say it's failure. We may make the right choice and commit to it 100%. It doesn't come off just because the opposition have some freak crazy player, or they do just something that's slightly different, or there was a bit of luck involved. Doesn't mean to say, again, it's failure. If we reviewed that, we go, well, we've made the same choice and commit to it in the same way. So we've got to understand is we've got to get them to understand learning can happen all the time. It's our accuracy of our evaluation of a situation and what we do with that information in the next week, 10 weeks, 6 weeks, a year, not just in the next 3 minutes. So I hope that answers the question.
Next question, Mark, was that if it were a drill and not live or against a defense versus a game, would you still use the review process?
Yes, 100%. I split up into two elements, and in practice phases, I have what's called a learning phase and a performance phase. I also have, in the performance, is split into two. I also have a competition phase of performance. In the learning phase is what we're sharing with them, and we share this overtly with players. It may be 10 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes. We're saying to them, guys, this is a learning phase. So the learning phase, generally, you will do a few more of those drills, those walkthroughs, those breakouts, some of the unopposed stuff. We still do the reviews. We still do, okay, talk to me, review there. Because what we want them to do, although it's not as quick, fast-paced, high-pressure, sweaty, what we're saying to them is, I still want you to understand what you just did there. Especially in new learning, it will really accelerate the process of their understanding. What we'll then establish is they don't quite get it. They were just nodding earlier on, but they don't understand. Then we can put in the interventions. And it may be, Stevie, can you just share with Danny there? Because you know Stevie knows it. And Stevie will take Danny through. It doesn't have to be from you. Or you just feel, right, there's a trend of misunderstanding now within the whole team. Guys, stop. I just want to clarify this one point. So the reviewing is equally important in any element.
Okay, Mark, another question is, how do you determine if a player can be a leader that can help his or her teammates on the floor or on the field?
Yeah, it's a good question. Often this is really misunderstood. I would suggest many potentially great leaders are the quiet, silent ones that are politely not saying anything and reading everything because we haven't set up an environment or a permission to actually let them exploit their natural leadership. They've just held it back. So often it's not the vocal people that just always shout and talk that are the effective leaders. Remember the point of a leader. A leader is a great influencer of the team to help you achieve your lighthouse. So a great leader may be somebody that just actually can silently, just quietly go around when the players are starting to get disengaged and get them fired up again, those little one-to-one little chats. It doesn't mean to say that you're just saying, right, I need one leader from the team. What we want to develop is an interdependent team. So remember the difference between an interdependent team and an independent team, a dependent team is an interdependent team is everyone is confident within their roles and can commit to them separately. But also they're very effective at interacting with each other to accept feedback and get the best out of each other. So this is where the leadership comes in. What you'll find is using these processes, and there's so many more, there's some free resources on my website where I talk about some of these as well, is you'll find is when you start putting these interventions, you'll have some of those quiet players that you thought, this guy isn't a leader, and all of a sudden they'll be saying smart stuff, right stuff. There'll be influence players just because you've given them permission and the environment and the culture to build. So I would say there are natural leaders, but some of those are silently, politely hiding in the background because everyone's talking. Doesn't mean to say that they haven't got it. There will be, you can train it and develop it, but in my experiences, some will just have it, but you may not see it yet because the environment hasn't allowed them to unlock it, if that makes sense.
No, very good. Another question are basically asking if you could go into more detail on good ways to create a lighthouse that the team agrees upon.
Yeah, so if you think about it, my main business statement of my whole philosophy in performance development systems is performance is a behavior, not an outcome. What I mean by that is anything we do in the highest performance, our outcomes are defined by performance. Our performance is defined by execution of our choices. Our execution of our choices is defined by our behavior. Everything sources back from the behavior. So our lighthouse really needs to be, when we're looking at that dream, how we want to play, what does it look like? What would I see and hear and feel when you're actually on the court, when you're supporting from the sideline, when you're waiting to go on? What would it look like? And if we think about the behaviors are, same as I looked at before, is what we want to connect to, we are in our effective state. So some players, especially early on, need to work out what that is for them. It's not the same for everyone. Let's work at being in the present, being the best I can be, being excellence, being the best you can with what you have in the present moment, not comparing yourself to others. Are you present? Are you making choices and committing 100%? In order to make great choices, we need to work out, okay, you need to be effectively know how to scanning. Do players know what that actually looks like? Often they'll nod, but they can't show you. So it needs to be, okay, scanning is, I'm looking for opportunities and threats, off the ball, on the ball. I use a three-phase understanding of what that is, a role of a player, and it's as simple as this. You have a role of excellence, doing the best you can with what you have in the present, when you are in possession of the ball. That's one. Your second one is you have excellence. What does excellence look like for a player? When your team has the ball, but you no longer have the ball, what is excellence to you then? What does that look like? You then have the third one. What does excellence look like when your team does not have the ball? Doesn't mean to say the opposition's got it. It might be a free ball. What does excellence look like for you then? Here's the important element with that, and linked into the lighthouse, is there is nothing in between them. So if you're not one of those three, you are no longer an effective part of the team. And the reason I say that is you may find, and this may resonate with you with some players you know, they'll have the ball, they'll be focused, and as soon as they pass the ball, there'll be half a second or a second where they're no longer excellent in one of those three. They're now cruising. So that is unacceptable based on our lighthouse, because what we're saying is you have the ball, now you don't have the ball, you should now be in excellence for what do you like if your team still has a ball and you do not. What is excellence for you then? There is no transition gap. You're in one and you're into the other. Your team does not have the ball now. What is excellence like for you in that split second? What would that look like in defense? What would that look like in transition? What would that look like in offense? What would that look like when you're on waiting to get on? You've just come off. What would that look like in your lighthouse? What would that look like when the chances are you're ready to go in the next 5 minutes? How are you scanning the game? How are you getting yourself ready? All these things are linked into the Lighthouse. That point about now I'm scanning, I'm making choices without fear, I'm committing to them, I'm reviewing the choice and the execution. I'm being effective in communication. This is the other thing. Communication, a lot of people say effective communication, and it's nonsense because they're not showing it. How many teams have we all worked with where we say we've spoke about communication for years, they're still not effective at it at the potential they could be? Here's the reason. We talk about words, clear, loud, etc., etc. It's nonsense. Effective communication is only effective if it has the desired impact. So if we collect that to the Lighthouse, what we're saying is, it doesn't matter what you say and how you're saying it. If it's not effective, if it doesn't have the desired impact, it is ineffective. So you need to understand when you speak to Sarah live in a game and a match, you may just speak slightly differently to Sarah than you need to Julie to have the impact. The same as Steve, you need to speak to Danny differently. And practice about learning under pressure, how I can press that button of that player. We do the 3 A's, very simple. Effective communication. I'm now saying something to another player. And it may be a behavioral thing to help them get back to present. It may be a tactical thing. Now, what I'm saying is, as soon as I've said it, I need to be looking at that player. Here's what that player has to do. They have to accept inside, right? I've accepted it. Now I have to acknowledge it. That can be a hand touch if it's close or a thumb up if it's at a distance. And then I need to act on it. So now I need to do something with it. So here's my point. If they don't acknowledge, you can't let them off the hook. If they don't act on it, you can't let them off the hook because you've started the interaction. It's not effective yet. You need to follow it through. Now, this is on the side level where coaches can help. If we're scanning for that, and we've agreed that's part of the Lighthouse, which is massive for all interactive type sports, we're now saying, right, I've seen somebody that's now reached out to somebody else, but I haven't seen acknowledgement action. They're now followed through again. I'm still not getting it. You can one-to-one with that player. Okay, talk to me. What did Danny say to you? Remind me what we agreed. What are the 3 A's? Okay, so what prevented you? Okay, next time, what can you do there? Show me, back in. Those few seconds one-to-ones. So if you think about the Lighthouse, for you, it's just understanding is it's not like tactically we will do this. It's actually looking at what is the type team we want to see and be. Not just for the players, but for the coach. What is me as an effective coach in that Lighthouse? Remember, the aim of a coach in a match should be to get the best out of the players. So yes, we need to make those tactical choices when they don't see them. Obviously in basketball, you have timeouts for that. In other sports, you just have the half time, or you have obviously putting your subs on. Here's the key to that though is, I need to understand, am I aware of my state? Am I in my effective state? Because if I'm not going to be scanning well. If I'm not scanning well, I'm not going to collate the data and make good judgment calls. And also my communication will not be effective when I have players that are under pressure anyway. So therefore, I'm not going to be part of the solution to the team. I'm actually part of the problem. So part of the Lighthouse has to be is, what does me in my dream scenario as a player be in this Lighthouse to help the players be the best they can be? Now, link back to practice, we talked about learning. Performance is just now, it's live 5-on-5 in basketball, it's full speed, and we're seeing the learning has it applied. Now, when we're talking about performance and we're talking about now competition performance, what we're actually doing is we split the team up and we attempt to wind the other team up, staying in the rules. What winds Danny up? Well, how can you get into Danny's head? Okay, that's your goal, go and do that. So now it's really pushing up the pressure of competition. What we're looking for then is, are our behaviors maintaining? Is someone allowed to get in their head? You're deliberately making poor referee decisions to see if there is that pause. Are they staying in those 3 elements of, am I in excellence when I have the ball, when I don't, when the opposition does? Are there cruise gaps? Are now that if the score's not going well, they're not interacting well, the behavior's unacceptable, they're now jogging back and not sprinting back? All these key elements we're looking at in that competition phase, because what we're looking for is to transfer that into the game. So instead of having this, actually, I want them to do this in the game, but now I reflect on my practice, the Lighthouse that I see in a game looks nothing like my practice because I'm helping them too much. There's too much stop-start, or actually I'm letting them jog back sometimes. I'm letting the scanning be poor. I'm letting the communication be poor because I'm so focused on looking at the tactical. I'm no longer looking at the very behaviors that are going to provide a success in the game, and I'm letting it go. I'm allowing to be in and out now and again. I talk about it after it's terrible for 5 minutes, but am I on it? Am I getting the players to say it's up to you to recognize it and it's up to you to do something about it, not wait for me to step in? This is that live interaction we're talking about on the court. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
Mark, one of the questions that just, has popped into my mind, and I'm sure that other coaches probably feel the same way. This is a paradigm shift for some coaches to take this type of approach with their players. So what would you counsel coaches who, number one, who are interested in moving into this type of, way of working and training with players? And number two, what do you tell that coach who starts on this path but suddenly finds himself starting to go back to that old mindset and that old paradigm of directing and yelling and falling back into their old ways of thinking?
Yeah, so the reality is we're all going to be doing that. If we think about it, if we want a player to change their behaviors under pressure, it takes a long time. We have to be consistent. We need to put in a support mechanism. They need to see the value, and we need to load it up in practice and not let them regress. It's the same for a coach. So what I always say to coaches is, be ready, this is going to be a nasty journey. Be ready, there's going to be some dips, but set yourself up a support strategy. The first thing I always say is film yourself in practice and in games. If you can't film yourself in a game because of the rules, just put a Bluetooth on in your phone and just put a mic so you can hear yourself back. And just watch it. Watch yourself to make sure, are you doing and communicating in the way you think you are, linked into your Lighthouse? What type team do you want to be? What type coach do you want to be? Then establish a baseline. Then it's really important, if you can't get someone like me or Alan Keane, that we mentor coaches in this, supporting teams on the change, get somebody. It doesn't have to be somebody that is a coach in basketball. It can be a coach in any sport. And you say to them, right, I'm going on this journey. Are you up for it? Can we support each other? Set up a WhatsApp group. And all you're saying is you're going to share what I call hot and cold reviews and little video clips. What I mean by that is you're going to set a WhatsApp group when you're in that with that coach. And all you're going to do is after every practice session, you're just going to, and you can just, as soon as the call down and you're walking off, press record in the WhatsApp if you don't want to type, and just review you itself, the other coaches and the team based on what you said success was and how you think you did. Then all you do is in the cold review is send a little video clip that you've looked at. Cold review is afterwards. It could be a day afterwards or 2 days after, once you've sat down and relaxed. You're not in the heat of the moment of the hot review, which is immediately afterwards. And you review that and you see if there's any differences. This is really important because if we want to say, I want to change because I see the value in changing, because if the players are going to change, it's got to be me because I'm the influence of the players. I've got to put in a support structure to get me to hold myself accountable, one, to what I'm doing, but also to see how I'm doing. And we can't rely on just feel for that. The video is a real stabilizer and establishing reality for you. So consistently film yourself. When you drop that little video clip in, it can be 2-3 minutes just of that pod, share in the WhatsApp group with that coach. Agree once a week, you'll just have a little phone call where you can say, okay, how are we doing? What have we agreed? It's a leveler for you. I always, when I set up with teams, is the hardest thing is you to be a junior coach wanting to follow this method, and you have a head coach that is just dictatorial telling, then wonder why players can't think for themselves in the game. And we haven't allowed them to think for themselves in practice. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, but that's the toughest point. So what you need to do then is, first point, can you get head coach see value into it? If not, just find a support mechanism outside that team. If you can find a support mechanism in the team, fantastic. And we do this with all the interventions. Alan Keane that's beyond, we do that with his whole team, and his GB team is exactly the same. So I'd say the filming, and then film every 4 weeks and then 8 weeks just to see are there any changes. But that filming and just taking notes. So look at the video, 1 minute 10. I was giving them the answers there. Actually, I started to look or talk about stuff that wasn't relevant to the success criteria. I was effective there, really like that. And just start making accurate, same as you'd review a match in the technical and tactical, review your craft as a coach, because your craft as a coach will influence the players. But understand it is not a linear line of progression, but understand also that this is a sliding scale. What I mean by that is, do not go to, I'm just going to stand here and do nothing and ask questions. That is not need-centered. Need-centered is do what the player needs, not what the player wants. So if we want players to actually drive their accountability, we want to set up frameworks where we give them permission to do that. But if they're unacceptable, What we're looking for is there are other players to hold them accountable and accept and get the hand touch. If not, we need to step in. If they still can't work it out, don't spend 15, 20, half an hour getting them to try and work it out. If you give them time to work it out, they can't, stop and tell them, walk it through. It's not about just thinking it has to be game based, or you can't do drills, or you can never tell them the answer. You can do all of it. Your experience of this in the video reviews, and even when you get someone like me and Alan, where we actually mentor online clients ongoing over months, is have someone external that can be more objective, more impartial, one to hold you accountable for how many, someone to talk about, okay, what are you seeing there? Okay, what were your options? Exactly the same as we're asking the players to do. So one, film yourself. Two, set up a support framework. Set some accountability in place and give yourself time. But also, if you're not sure, find someone that understands this type of coaching and really be direct with them. Okay, so give me some examples of what I can do in this situation. I'm having a trouble here. What can I do here? I'm having a trouble with this type player that's not engaging. What can I do here? To get the support, because there's tons of applicational tools that can accelerate this, but it will always boil down to your awareness of your state, your ability to scan effectively behaviors first, not get caught up in just one or two players or where the ball's going. Your ability to make good judgments on what you're seeing and what you decide to, when to decide to step in, and how you're going to communicate when you step in. Is it one-to-ones? Is it resetting the whole team? Is it group chats? Is it a breakout? Is it just manipulating the situation to allow them to work it out themselves? So it's a long journey, but it's just putting a support mechanism in place that's going to help you grow.
Another question, which I think was an excellent question, is how do you get your assistants? How do you get buy-in from your assistant coaches? And I'm going to add a second part to that question as well, Mark, in that how do you work with your assistants as you begin to move to implement this? How do you coach your coaches with this?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, I'd always ask them to set up the Lighthouse with the, so if you're head coach, ask them their Lighthouse. So what type team do we want to be? What does it look like for us as coaches? What does it look like for them as players? Just get to the point of getting them to agree what the Lighthouse is. If you don't get to agree what you need to get to, you're going to have conflict. And if they agree they want self-adapting teams that can think live, make effective choices, be relentless, then we can go, okay, brilliant. Let's all agree to see where we are in that. And part of that will be, let's all film ourselves. And once we've filmed ourselves, just link up in partners and just share the notes of your film. Look through your own film, put some time notes down just about your interaction with the players, your effectiveness, your interventions, how you communicated. Then share that with and buddy up with someone else, another coach, and we'll just discuss. And we'll just spend a few weeks just going through that. That will start tremendous dialogue and establish the baselines. Then set up a watch group where you agree to do the hot reviews and the cold reviews. Always head coach goes last, and always agree you're going to do that little connection with the videoing linked into, okay, so what are we doing to help the players? So let's set the order of in, are we going to get them to agree what the Lighthouse is? Are we going to do that whiteboard element to get them to understand this is the type we want them to do? Make decisions. Start identifying the strengths and weaknesses in the opposition, exploit them. Are we going to teach them how to self-review, i.e., what are you seeing, making a choice, commit to it, review the choice and execution. Teach them how to do the one-to-ones. Here's the other important thing. Set up the success criteria to make it easy in a practice session. So here's some little tools that I use. Head coach must always share with everyone and make sure they know their clear roles. And what I mean by that is if you're a support coach, you need to have a specific role. It can't be general and just, backing up what coach says. One of the things you can do that makes it easier is ask a coach, can you scan for behaviors in this phase? I'll lead on tech tac. You feedback, you can do resets, which is another one of the tools. You can do one-to-ones just on behavior. I'll drive the tech tac. When we rotate round, can we agree what the success is for this phase? Is it learning or performance? Agree the non-negotiables of everyone. What I mean by that is the one or two things in behaviors that if we have to do every single time in every practice and every game that we'll just hold ourselves accountable for. And then all we do is make sure that we're honest to that. So what we're not doing is, if we say success is transitioning this, what we can't start talking about is other things. Assistant coach can't start talking about other things. When a player is going to their groups, we go, right, in your groups review, the coaches all come into the head coach and they say, right, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. And the head coach says, right, don't talk about that. I've got that, you can speak after that. So when the players come in, what we don't have is just other coaches adding information that really disengages and doesn't show the united front of the players. So there's so much you can do, but always start with having the chat with the coaches. What is our Lighthouse? What type team? So what type coach we need to do? How do we need to change practice to do that? Let's all agree to film ourselves. Let's watch it, then link up in partners. Let's share our observation, discuss, and all share what we saw, agree what our work-ons are for ourselves as coaches, set up our responsibilities in practice, do our hot reviews, do our cold reviews. And just that in itself will stimulate so much dialogue within the behaviors of coaches and the players. It will help you really start this journey.
Excellent, excellent. No other questions right now that have popped up. As we kind of close and come towards the end of this dialogue, Mark, what other thoughts do you have on this? What other things would you share with coaches as they kind of start this journey and begin to really kind of explore this approach?
Yeah, I'd say that the biggest element is be aware of the danger of podcasts, these conferences, YouTube. The danger is that to embed one thing takes time. Identify for yourselves what is the one or two most important things for you within your own behavior as a coach and for the player's behavior, and just identify, what does that look like? What does that mean? Do I understand it? How can I apply that? What are my steps? And don't add anything else. We're in danger in this society now because there's so much information on us all the time, especially in this lockdown, so many of these great events, is make sure that you don't start picking up so many ideas. You change too much, so nothing ever gets in bed, and you start to lose your way as a coach. I always say to coaches, I don't want you to be Mark Bennett. I want you to be Danny. I want you to be Steve. Identifying who you are, embrace your personality. Don't attempt to be a robot, but only identify what are the one or two things now that's going to have the biggest impact and work on them. And the principle is we are where we are. We're ready when we're ready. Just work on that, embed it. If it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. But I guarantee you, if they're the most important things, then that will give you your greatest return. Don't keep adding stuff. You'll end up being lost. You won't be effective in anything, and the players will end up being confused. And unfortunately, even working with the highest sports across the world in NBA, in rugby union, in Major League Baseball, one of the challenges we have is everyone wants to innovate, but actually no one embeds anything. So we end up change for the sake of change. And I would say that's the biggest danger within this, particularly with, I would say, drills, game-based approach, all these. Don't be a purist in one. They all have their place. What's important is you understand them well enough to know the judgment of when it's appropriate. Yes, we want to be in a point where the practice is we don't need to step in and it is totally a pose with high pressure. But there's times when we need to break out. There's times when we need to do a little bit of unopposed, but don't think I need to do that for a day. Just work out, do I understand what game-based is? Do I understand what constraints is? Do I understand what drills are? And don't just add a drill because you saw it on a YouTube. Does it add value to me? Do I need to adjust it? When do I need to put it in? So build your confidence in understanding your role for your style, for your Lighthouse, and don't compromise on that. Don't be scared to challenge people like me. Don't be scared to challenge other coaches. Don't be scared to challenge the players in what you agreed the Lighthouse was and why you're doing the things you are and what support you need from them, even as a coach. If I stop doing what I said I was going to do, I'm giving you players permission to let me know. If I'm talking too much, I'm giving you permission to say, coach, we got this, and I'll step back. So it's all about understanding, share the vision with everyone, pick the one or two things that make a big difference and just spend time embedding them. Don't try too much.
Excellent, excellent. I have one other question, and then after that, Mark, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about PDS, about your company, and some of the resources that you have available to coaches. This question was, often successful execution is based on behaviors and choices that don't align with the coaches. How do you deal with the maverick that executes but not the way you want?
Well, this could go two ways. It's a good question. One of the things that we've got to recognize is that let's not be fixed as coaches on a idea or a concept or a choice in a certain moment. What I mean by that is there's a fine line, and there's a difference between a maverick player continuing doing high risk stuff that now and again comes off but doesn't come off often enough to be successful. So that's one extreme. But we also have what some people see as mavericks, but I see as great visionaries of the game that may see a choice that we haven't seen as a coach. And one of the greatest strengths of the best coach I've ever worked with is they, even if they haven't thought of it and they want to go with the different way, particularly if they've got one or two players that going, coach, we can do this, and actually, okay, show me, let's put some high stress situations, but if it works, we'll go with your way, not my way. So it's understanding that there's that line, light and shade to it. But here's the other element, is if you have a maverick that is going through, yeah, but it came off, coach, all you do is you film them, film opportunities, film it in games, and then you ask them, can we just review this? I'm interested in what were the choices you saw, and let's look at the success based on the choices you made. Were there other options in this situation? So instead of attempting to tell them they're wrong, we're getting them to evaluate based on choice and execution, based on stuff that we know has been seen. Another way, if they have high egos, is instead of sharing video of them doing it in a game, get video of another team with another player making the same type choices, which there's plenty around, and ask them to review that based on, okay, what were the choices in this situation. I also do it with, get coaches to do it with players where they don't see the whole element. So what they do is you only send it the snippet that shows the actual choice being started, the execution of the choice being started, but they won't get to see if it was successful or not. So you're asking to look at, okay, that minute or so, what were the choices? Player you can see went for that. What were the others? Which one would you go on for? Where's the risk, etc., based on understanding of the game? And then you start the dialogue back with them, because actually the outcome may not be as important as where we want them to focus on. With these players, obviously, if they're only so focused on the outcome, let's take that outcome away to stimulate the dialogue on the choices. What you can do then is also, if you know, right, actually, it may be, oh, I don't know this is another scenario, it may be that actually under pressure, that's the only thing they can do, because under pressure, they're scared of going for the other options. So they might tell you it's the right one, but deep down, there may be some other reasons. So what you can do then in practice is say, right, okay, here's some choices. For the next 10 minutes, you can't make this choice. You can make any other choice. So you're restricting the choices they can make, and then load the pressure up. Then you start into that competition performance, and slowly but surely, you'll get them to go, actually, I'm a bit comfier on these, and I can see the value of doing the others. Also, raise their awareness to, if a team's scouting you, and they've recognized that you will always make this go-to choice in its situation, you're easy to read. So let's build your arsenal up. I love that choice, but let's build other choices so that actually you're harder to read. Now, a player will make connection to that. So I can't answer the question directly because there's so many variables, but I hope that's given you a few variables to look at. The biggest one I take from that is if they come up with a choice that actually works, pressure load it, give it some options, and if it works, go with theirs, even if it's not yours and you haven't thought about it, because that is so engaging, and the empowerment to that and the commitment of players doing that is phenomenal.
Excellent. Again, tell us a little bit more about how coaches can reach you directly, some of the resources that you have available to coaches who want to maybe do a deeper dive on this. And then next week we will have Mark back along with Alan Keene to have a little bit more in-depth discussion, not only about this, but other topics as well. So Mark, share just a little bit with the coaches here, how they can reach out to you.
So my website is pdscoach.com, so Papa Delta Sierra, PDS. My Twitter's PDS Coach as well. The website, I've got a bunch of podcasts where I talk about different elements of this, the needs centers coaching approach. There's also video examples of me presenting, and also some examples of live in action in different sports. On there, you'll see one of the main work I do is I work fully with teams. I do online mentoring. Alan does it with me as well now for independent coaches anywhere in the world, where you send us videos. We have weekly Skypes where we talk about and upskill you bespoke to your needs. But I also do that with teams, and also do that live. So I actually fly out to the States, Canada, all over, and Great Britain, and support the whole team, which is the accelerated route. But the online support is still there within the live support. So there's so many service options. But even if you have no money and you want to grow, get on the free resource page on the website, work through it, and just start taking some notes. And it may, if you're really committed, do that before Alan and I come on, because you may pick up some questions from that you can share when Alan and I come on. But pdscoach.com is the free resource, and also it shares all the services that I offer in helping coaches develop and teams.
Excellent. Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. And coaches, we will be setting up that follow-up for next week. So be on the lookout for an announcement so that we get that scheduled, that you make sure that you sign up, and of course check out Mark's resources and his website. I'm going to go ahead and end the session here for this session. Again, thank you for joining us, and wish everybody an excellent day, excellent morning, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again, Mark.
Pleasure.